I need a miniature that doesn't exist, so I'm gonna make it myself. I currently have 3 project ideas in mind that could all be fulfilled using the same base miniature. So in this video, I am going to be sculpting an original miniature for the purposes of kit bashing. There are definitely other ways that I could solve this problem using 3D models and 3D printing, but those are all tools and resources I don't have access to, so I'm gonna stick to what I know and just make something by hand. Starting off with just a laser cut MDF round, I've drilled some holes into my base so I could glue a little bit of armature wire in. When I say armature wire, I mean leftover scrap wire that I found. And then I'm super gluing it to the base to get the pose for the legs that I'm after, and using a little bit of baking soda just to make sure that wire stays down in place. To fill up the majority of the body of this model, I'm hot gluing some foil down. Eventually I'm going to be using Super Sculpey, which has to bake in the oven, and I know you're already wondering why on earth I would use hot glue, but it's gonna be so deep inside this model, and with the wire there, I'm not worried about anything falling apart. Finally, with just some standard milliput, I'm beefing up that wire to give me a nice strong armature to work off of, and we can move on to actually sculpting. Because this model is going to be largely symmetrical, I actually went ahead and sculpted the first leg off camera while I was on Discord one night chatting with my friends. We were discussing current projects that we were working on, things that we want to do in the future, the abysmal state of the tech industry, and through all of that, I worked out a process that I liked for building up the musculature of this mini. To make sure that I've got some really good muscle definition, I'm adding on little balls of clay one at a time, and then coming back with my ball tool to connect the clay and smooth down the seams. If at any point it feels like it isn't matching with the opposite side, I can just beef it up with a little bit more clay and fill in gaps as necessary. I often like to sculpt things off camera. I feel like I can get much more focused in what I'm doing. Whenever I have to think about things like focus or detail or camera angles, I start to sort of get lost a little bit, and I'm not paying attention to the piece in front of me. I'm also doing something a little bit different this time around for smoothing and detailing the clay. I've got a jar of solvent here which I used to remove paint from some minis that I wasn't quite happy with, and this actually melts the surface of the clay in a way that isopropyl alcohol doesn't do, so it gets me a really smooth result. I then come back in with my chip brush and add a little bit of texture all over the clay, followed by one final layer of that same solvent to smooth it out again. I'm not getting too concerned or bogged down into the detail or the texture because, again, I need this to be a generic mini for multiple projects. Now, just like before, I'm adding in more foil wherever I need to build up mass for this figure, so I'm not wasting any of my clay. I'm coming in and refining the shapes as needed, just building up little by little and baking in between each layer that I add after smoothing it down with that same paint thinner from before. One of the reasons that I do love Super Sculpey or any other polymer clay is that you can work in stages, and so you can immediately go and set your work once you're happy with it instead of waiting around for something like green stuff or milliput to cure after several hours. Another thing that I'm really paying attention to with this piece is giving it lots of curves, giving it lots of smooth edges, and going in and filling in any of the deep details. So that way I'll get a better mold from it later on, and hopefully some really beautiful castings without having to get full production equipment. Now for the arms, I decided to forego any armature on the inside of them. I just used some solid blocks of clay and then came back with a knife and removed the excess clay until I got this very simple polyhedral form. Then I can come back and add that clay that I removed into the individual muscle groups, just like we did on the legs. Again, I'm keeping all of these shapes and anatomy generic enough that this could be used for a hill giant or a demon prince or a root terror for turnip 28. Okay, let's talk about making the head. In my pin vise, I've got a piece of armature wire with a hook curved into it, and this way I can pass some foil through the hook, squish it down until it's nice and firm around the metal wire, and then I can come back and cover that in a layer of Sculpey. Having it separate from the rest of the body while sculpting is just going to give me a little bit more control, and it's going to make it easier to add in some of the smaller details. As you can see, I've given myself some really rough guidelines. I've added on a bit more clay to build up the mouth and chin area, and then I'm building up the musculature for the cheeks. You can go ahead and ignore a lot of what I'm doing for the eyes. I know that they look quite puffy and ridiculous right now. I'm gonna eventually go back and fix those off camera. I'm not following a lot of specific rules when it comes to anatomy for this face, because again, I intend to repurpose this miniature in different ways. But for the base model, I wanted it to have a very serene, almost calm expression. My idea for this creature as a standalone piece is hill giants in my homebrew world for RPG systems. In this world, all giants are effectively the same and then eventually branch off into different categories because of where they are in the world or how they live. And so I actually call these creatures the burl. Some of them live in vast wooded areas and eventually grow long and lithe like the trees that they're surrounded by, while others, like our friend here, live amongst massive hills and mountains and eventually become plump and content and just stop moving and become the very hills and mountains themselves. You can imagine looking at the silhouette of this character with a little bit of grass and other terrain glued onto the outside of it. It's going to look like a hill itself. You can see where we've ended up after a valiant effort of sculpting for about a day and a half. We've got our head all detailed and finished and baked off, and the majority of the body of our character ready to go. The missing details for the hands and feet are going to be left, again, generic enough just to have a basic form of anatomy. But here's a very limited tutorial on how to make a quick and dirty hand. You're going to start off by cutting a rectangle of clay that's about the width of the fist of your character. Then taking whatever sharp tool you have, carve 3 horizontal lines across the clay. These make up the different digits of the fingers. You're now going to fold those in on themselves until the hand starts to form a fist. And then once you're happy with that shape, roll out another piece of clay and attach it just underneath the rectangle, bending it around to form the thumb of your hand. All of this can be further detailed once it's attached to the body, but this just gives you the basic shape. The last thing I would recommend is to definitely add on individual balls of clay to represent the knuckles of the hand. But once you spend enough time practicing and detailing it, you eventually get a pretty decent result, as you can see here for the 2 finished hands on our creature. So the last thing to do is to figure out how we're going to position the head. It's important to look at your character from all sides, because if I look at it from just the front, it looks great on its own where it's positioned, but as soon as I turn it around and look at it from a profile view, the head looks absolutely crazy and it's way too far forward. So I'm going to make sure to position it just a little bit further back. We want there to be just a whisper of realistic anatomy in this creature, because this way it has a lot more potential for kit bashing and conversions and all other kinds of just miniature goodness. While we're attaching the head to the rest of this character, I just want to say thank you so much for checking out this video, hitting the like button, and of course subscribing if you haven't already. If you enjoy the work that I do and want to see it continue in the future, there are lots of ways to support me with the links below in the description of this video. As always, I hope you're doing well, I hope you're making weird stuff, and I will see you very soon. Bye!